Raptors Weekly for the week of January 4th. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year, listener. Happy New Year, Will.
Yeah, I'm back. Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah,
back
Happy New Year. Yeah, good. Everybody's good. Everybody's back. The podcasts are back. The podcasts are rolling. You got a Friday pod going there with Blake. Listened to it last time. I heard about your identity crisis you're facing, Will, in your ripe old age of 23. We heard Will go at DeRozan, and DeMar DeRozan tweet back, which rattled Blake.
No. Blake tweeted at DeMar.
Oh, Blake tweeted. Yeah, sorry. Blake tweeted
I was
at DeMar.
unrelated to this whole thing.
You were a innocent bystander who got caught in the crossfire. So lots of things are happening. So guys, if you haven't, if your thirst for podcasts isn't quenched by this one, make sure to check out the Friday podcast with Will and Blake, where they, they talk about Raptors basketball. And, I'm sure they'll talk about what happened tonight against the Bulls at the ACC. The city of Toronto has issued a weather alert for anybody walking around outside the ACC, but inside the ACC, Will, there was a heat alert, and it was Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler happened.
Jimmy Butler broke one of Jordan's records.
Which one was that?
And the record for most points and a half. Butler scored 40, and the previous record was held by Jordan at 39. Mm-hmm. So. Anytime you break one of Michael Jordan's records, I can't even believe it. Like, the Raptors they were in the driver's seat, like, for most of the game. They built up the lead. They were playing much better. The Bulls are short 3 key guys in the rotation, and it just felt like, all right, the Raptors are home. They figured out the Bulls. They weathered the best punch, and they even had like a 12-point lead with 5 minutes left. But then Jimmy Butler, man, he just kept going. And the Raptors, their offense just died.
So can I sum up this week as we lost twice to the only good team we faced and beat 2 shorthanded teams? Or is that being harsh?
Who knows? I mean, at this point, is being down Derrick Rose really that shorthanded? Like, I would not have minded if Derrick Rose is available tonight and took some shots away from Jimmy Butler.
You're that scared of Etuan Moore.
Hey, Etuan Moore hit a clutch basket down the stretch. Remember,
over
he crashed
Corey
the
Joseph,
offensive
he
rebound.
crashed that offensive rebound, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So let's talk about this game. Let's deal with this right now. So the Raptors lost 113-115 to the Bulls at home, and Jimmy Butler exploded. The Raptors were in control for most of the game, maintaining a 6 to 7 point cushion. Bulls threatened, but still, I mean, the Raptors were up like 15 or something with 6-7 minutes to go. And then Butler happened, and the Raptors offense kind of went into that ISO mode where they give it to Kyle Lowry, and if he's doing something great, or they give it to DeMar DeRozan, and if he's doing something great, if not, it's a missed shot. There's no offensive rebounding, and the Bulls came in and gave it to Butler, who scored. Is that pretty much like, where do you place the blame on this? Is it part complacency on the Raptors, who might have thought they won this game, or was it the offense going ISO, therefore becoming inefficient? Like, what happened in those last 6 minutes besides just saying that Jimmy Butler exploded?
Man, I mean, we've seen this thing with the Raptors a lot, where in crunch time scenarios, the Raptors try to just kind of run out the clock a little bit, start their offense much later, and then only have one option on the play. And a lot of the times that option is an ISO. And, I mean, at the same time, you think that Lowry and DeRozan are good ISO scorers, like they can reasonably generate shots. And today, they missed a lot. So it's not necessarily like all their fault. Like, they do isolations a lot for most of the game anyway. But yeah, just down the stretch, man, it was pretty bad. Dwayne Casey, he would call timeouts, and then I don't think the Raptors scored on a single, like, immediately after the timeout play, except for one where Kyle Lowry, the original play was blown up. It was like 42 seconds left. The immediate play was blown up, and then Lowry had to basically dribble the ball the entire possession and score this really tough fadeaway. So, I mean, you would just hope that the Raptors can run their normal offense, because for the rest of the game, aside from the last 5 minutes, the Raptors, their offense was looking pretty good. There's a lot of equal distribution. Luis Scola was really nice. JV had a couple of post scores, that kind of stuff. Corey Joseph had himself a really nice bounce back game. So, there was a lot of options on the floor, and it's not like Lowry and DeRozan weren't hot. They were hot, but just down the stretch, like, you would hope to not only just run plays that have more options, so if the first option fails, then it's not just someone forcing up a bad shot, but also hoping that you can involve other people in the play a little bit more to break the defense down. So you hopefully don't just have Lowry and DeRozan doing all the work. Because, like, that one play where the Raptors run in a lot, where they just have the high screen at like literally midcourt, and then Lowry runs from the backcourt all the way in.
Yeah.
There's no other option on that play. Yeah. Lowry has to drive all the way to the basket, and at that point he has to shoot. And the Bulls saw it coming. They put a big man at the hoop, and what do you think? It's a 6-footer in Kyle Lowry, maybe even sub 6-foot guy in Kyle Lowry, and then there's 7-foot Pau Gasol at the hoop. You know, it's hard to score in that.
And that's the thing, that the Bulls ran a similar offense through Jimmy Butler late in the game. Except, and this is the difference between the two teams, whenever you run that kind of ISO offense, whenever you clear out for one player and ask him to do his thing, the guy with a higher talent will win. And in a 7-game series, or 9 times out of 10, the guy with a higher talent will win, and that's what happened. I mean, they had Jimmy Butler, and we had Kyle Lowry, and as you know, he's not at the level of Jimmy Butler. Kind of gave more importance to the fact that the Raptors need to diversify their offense when they play late in games. So I'm just looking at the NBA clutch stats, which they track, and the Raptors are actually 10th in the league in clutch. I think it's like 5 points or less, like a 5-point lead or deficit with like under 5 to go. So they're okay here, but somehow the eye test doesn't always agree with the stats.
It depends on the context of it too. Like if the Raptors feel like the game is slipping from them, then I think they will seize up. But like if they're playing from behind, they do tend to play more of a free-flowing, relaxing, like normal types of offense. It's just when they feel like, oh my God, the other team is coming back, that's when their offense kind of, you know, goes down. And, you know, credit to the Bulls defense too, because the Bulls have one of the best defenses in the league, and obviously that plays a huge role in, you know, the Raptors' struggle down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. And plus, the Raptors should have a good clutch scenario, because like the Raptors are one of the top 10 teams in the league, so they should have a top 10 net rating throughout most of the game. It's just in clutch scenarios, it's just ugly. And you know, obviously, it was a problem much more earlier in the year, and it's sort of been pushed to the background. But when push comes to shove, it still seems like the Raptors only have 2 options, and it's Lowry and DeRozan, and they kind of get tunnel vision.
Yeah, so let's talk about DeMarre Carroll here, and he was tasked with guarding Jimmy Butler, and you know, he's supposed to be the guy who is the stopper of the other team's best player, and he essentially got lit up, which happens. You know, nothing. It can happen to anybody. I get that. And in the post-game comments, he's like, he's hinting that he's injured, but he's not saying outright that he's injured. And I wish he would not do that, because that's a trait that I hate in players. Like if you're injured and you can't perform up to your level, sit down, take a rest, take 3 weeks off, and get better, get 100% and come back. But this idea of the last couple of games of him playing through it, having a poor game, and then in the post-game scrums, essentially kind of like, you know, rolling his eyes and hinting that he's injured, I hate that about him. Just sit down if you're injured. And that's the one thing I never liked about Amir Johnson. Even though he played with a lot of injury, he always hinted the fact that he was injured, even though, you know what I mean? It's one of those things, like if you're 100%, play. If you're not, sit down. And this guy needs to sit down right now, because he's not performing on either end right now. And it's killing the Raptors, and it's killing my fantasy team.
Man. All right. Okay, 2 things. One, DeMarre Carroll is actually injured. Like, he's still on the minutes restriction right now.
So sit down. That's all I'm saying.
Only played 24 minutes. Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, that's fair. I mean, realistically, it's probably best for both he and the team for him to get fully healthy, then come back. But at the same time, if he has the ability to give the team, I don't know, a decent 20 minutes a game, then it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, yeah, I could definitely see how it could be annoying, because after a game like this, when you were brought in to be the defensive stopper and Jimmy Butler is just going off, and then after the game you say, well, I was injured, then that sounds almost like you should just like take the loss and move on, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, I thought that DeMarre Carroll gave pretty good minutes. Honestly, his defense and on Jimmy Butler down, you know, the final 5 minutes, I think that's when he finally checked in. Before that, it was Terrence Ross, and yeah, I mean, not surprisingly, Terrence Ross and DeMar DeRozan could not guard Jimmy Butler, especially when he was that hot. And then when DeMarre Carroll came in, I think DeMarre Carroll made life more difficult for Butler, but at the same time, you know, Butler was just hitting a lot of really, really tough shots.
Before we move on from DeMarre Carroll, somebody on Twitter sent me this comparison. Let me get the handle right here, man. It's Lace 'em Up, Lace_M_up. And he goes, take a look at Hedo Turkoglu's number in the 2009-10 season versus Carroll's this season. Hedo's were slightly better.
All right, look. First of all, Hedo, like, he was one of the worst defensive players I've seen, and not just like not ability necessarily, but like his effort on that end was just so lackluster, and just obviously you could compare points, rebounds, assists, and stuff like that, but at the same time, Hedo defensively was much worse than Carroll. So that's one. Number two, Carroll is like the third, probably fourth option on the court at all times. Mm-hmm. Whereas like Hedo was number two, I would say, behind Bosh, right? And like I don't know, man. It was just also like there was a lot more expected out of Hedo in terms of what are you going to bring offensively, and he would just consistently not bring anything. And I thought like one of his biggest games of the season was like that one against the Knicks. Like it was like 2 months in the year. He had finally recovered from all that fatigue, Hedo's fatigue from playing Eurobasket.
Yeah. that fatigue lasted 4 months. It just never go away.
He was so tired. He's so tired.
I think Ebola took less time to get wiped out than his fatigue. Sierra Leone, shout out. Ebola free. Yeah, I think the expectation thing is big here because Hedo was supposed to be like the number one option. Or number two behind Bosh, and he was supposed to be the point forward, and he just didn't produce. Whereas Carroll is actually producing expectedly at the offensive end and somewhat below average at the defensive end, and I guess you can account that to injury and not any sort of fake fatigue.
And plus, like Carroll's, like his numbers are down a little bit, like especially his field goal percentage. His 3-point percentage is, I think, at 37%, which is pretty close to his career average, and only 2 points off his career high last year. It's just, you come from Atlanta where you're the fifth option and you have such a beautiful system all around you, and then you come to Toronto where you have to find, first of all, you have to find your bearings on a new team, and second of all, you have to find your bearings on a team that isn't nearly passing as much as Atlanta does, and not just passing, but passing productively as Atlanta does. The Raptors rank dead last in assist opportunities, so it's always gonna be hard for a role player like Carroll to come in and replicate his stats perfectly from what he did a season ago on a different team.
And it's a drastic difference because last year, looking at Basketball Reference here, his 2-point field goals 73% were assisted. And this season, it's 54%. That's a significant change in the way he's getting his points. Instead of things being set up for him and him being like kind of like the end product in a good sequence of passes and play, he's now become a guy who feasts off the offensive rebound or tends to find his own, or essentially gets his points in very unpredictable ways, which I'm sure he has difficulty to plan for. Like he doesn't know where he's going to be getting his points from each and every game. At Atlanta, he had that, and right now he hasn't had that, and the injury has compounded the fact that his offensive role remains a bit undefined, even 40 games into the season.
Yeah, that's also a concern. But I thought the Raptors tried to do some things with him early on in the season to expand his offensive game. Like they made him run pick and rolls, and he's just not. I don't know, man. If you're actually gonna ask him to run a pick and roll and have him shoot instead of just like using that pick and roll to create a shot elsewhere and then passing away, like I don't think he's someone who's effective in the pick and roll. You're seeing, I think last year he ran pick and rolls on 5% of his plays, and now I think it's like 20.
Yeah.
That's just a completely different role for him, and hopefully he will find that. I think that the health doesn't help in this scenario, but then again, he's also a guy who plays so hard. And his injury is plantar fasciitis, and it's super nagging. Like, I don't know. Unless you actually do sit him for like 2 weeks, I don't think he will get fully healthy.
He sat for 2 weeks. Maybe it should have been 3 or 4. Because if you're going to sit, now's the time to sit. I mean, we're already kind of risking the whole. Some people complain about the high minute usage between Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. They're upwards of 36 this year. And how this bit us last year in the postseason was quite evident. Kyle Lowry entered the postseason injured. Like, if we don't want to have a repeat of that, we should probably cut those minutes down. But DeMarre Carroll is a guy we got specifically for the postseason. And to have him risk his health at this juncture in the season seems a little irresponsible to me. So on Tuesday, the Raptors were 7th. Today, they're second in the East, despite a loss. And that's going to continue, I think, Will, for the rest of the season. I don't think any team's going to, create separation there. So it's better to just, even though the East is tight, take your lumps, take 2 weeks off, maybe extend the All-Star game, give him a break till the All-Star game or something like that, so he has a break and he comes back post-All-Star break healthy, because that's what's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know, man. This year in the East, it's hard. Last year there was a lot more valid argument of look, just give Kyle Lowry some rest. I mean, the Raptors last year, there's no chance they're going to miss the playoffs. Whereas this year, like they could actually miss the playoffs. They're only 2 games out of the 8th seed right now. And yeah, last year Lowry was clearly injured down the stretch, and they were just kept playing him. That was stupid. I think hopefully the Raptors can build up a big enough lead where they can do that later on in the year. But yeah, in the meantime, I mean, as long as Lowry and DeRozan are healthy, it seems like they could honestly maintain like a 60 winning percentage. So yeah, let Carroll rest. But yeah,
easier said than done, and I can see both points of view. But like the last thing you want to do is have this Carroll the way you're seeing him today, like today on January 3rd. You don't want this Carroll on April 1st, because then the whole season has been pointless.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Hopefully you build for the bigger picture, and you see that with a lot of other clubs where they will manage minutes and stuff a little bit more studiously than what the Raptors do. Whereas the Raptors feels like maybe it's just because Dwayne Casey doesn't necessarily have as much job permanency as other coaches, although he is the 6th most longest tenured coach, I think, or 5th in the league, which is kind of crazy to think about. It does feel like Dwayne Casey plans every game as if he's going to win that game, which is obviously what you're supposed to do as a coach, but you also have to manage long term as well.
So the Raptors are where they are. DeMar DeRozan's been on fire. We have to talk about him. Since December, he might get Player of the Month, which is going to be announced on Monday, I believe. For December, or since December 1st, he's averaging 37 minutes a game. His offensive rating is 106. He's playing really, really freaking well, man. There's nothing much more to be said beyond that. He's shooting a high percentage. He hit a couple of threes today. Everything's kind of working out for him. And for me, his mid-range game has been on point and on target for really the whole month.
So this is like by far the best stretch of his career, right? You agree?
Yeah.
This last month?
Yeah. I'd say so.
What do you see as a difference in this game, or do you feel like he's just hot? Like it'll cool off eventually?
I think he's hot. He's making a lot of like he's getting more separation and elevation on his shots. He hit some shots against Charlotte, man, which were really impressive. Like in the first half, he carried the Raptors. And against Washington, he hit some pretty good shots. Granted, they didn't have Beal to work, for the Raptors to worry about and all that. But number one, he's going more inside. I think I spoke on the last podcast that a lot of his shots are now in the 3 to 10 foot range rather than the 16 to 22 foot range. I think that definitely helps. Obviously, it's an easier shot, so he's making more of them. I think it's a hot streak. That's all it is. I don't want to do any psychology on DeMar DeRozan beyond that. What do you see?
Yeah, that's kind of what I see as well. Just that it's a hot streak, but at the same time, there's also a little bit more of a maturity to his game. Like he's in order for DeRozan to like bump his efficiency up a little bit more, he just has to cut out like 2 or 3 bad shots per game. And I find myself watching the Raptors, like there'll be occasionally in times in the first quarter where he's like trying to find his range and he'll take somewhat of an ill-advised shot, but down the stretch, putting aside this Bulls game, I think DeRozan's like shot selection is a lot better, and I mentioned this to Blake on the Extra podcast, but yeah, the Raptors are running plays for when DeRozan like goes into his attack motion that like they make sure to leave an outlet for him, so that he can sort of reset the play if possible, and to run the play a little bit earlier in the shot clock so that you actually, if you do choose to use the reset, you can still create something of a productive thing. And I don't know. It's definitely mostly just a hot streak, but at the same time, this is also the most maturity I've seen DeRozan play with and offensively, and even some of his jump passes, he's drawing a lot more, even more defensive attention than he did, just normally because he's been so hot recently, and he's done a really good job of finding shooters in the corners and stuff. And I mean, at this rate, like this is the kind of DeRozan that I would feel comfortable with the Raptors maxing out.
Yeah, it's also what the Raptors have done a little bit differently with him is that they always have a guy at the opposite corner when he's driving. So if he drives left or right on the court, you'll always see a guy in the far corner in case DeRozan wants to pass it out. And that pass is generally available to him. It's an easier pass because the defender is always shading towards the strong side. So he has that option to him. Before, he didn't always have that. That guy was always shaded to the wing, which was a tougher pass for him to make because there's more defense there. But now they've made a couple of adjustments where, to your point, that there's a release valve present for him. But the difference is that the release valve is present in a position where they can be an actual threat. And it helps that Terrence Ross is having is having a bit of a resurgence. His 3-point shot seems to be back. And I think that's also had an impact on DeRozan's game where he's seeing more space just by the fact that Ross is playing better because he plays a lot of minutes with him. But one thing that surprises me, man, and every time it happens, I'm like, I can't believe he fell for this, is that the defender is biting on his fakes. Even when, as a viewer, as a Raptor fan, I've watched every game, you just know when DeRozan's like faking a shot versus taking one. And the amount of times I see, even Jimmy Butler in today's game, in the game on Monday, how many times a good defender like that falls for DeRozan's fakes tells me that he's got that fake down. And like at some point, I almost expect that to taper off and people to just not start defending that anymore. But he continually gets to the line 8.7 times in December, which is damn impressive.
Yeah, I think that's like the third most out of anyone in the league, behind Harden and DeMarcus Cousins. And like, no offense to DeRozan, but he's obviously not at that level of dangerousness in terms of a scorer. But it's a great fake, and he uses it a lot. I think he pump fakes for a high usage guy. I think he pump fakes a lot more than a lot of other players. But I think at this point it's also like he's a bit more dangerous. Like if you're trying to stop DeRozan, he's developed his game to the point where he has multiple possible options, and you might, I don't know, that makes you think more as a defender. Like, okay, like DeMarre Carroll, or like Patrick Patterson's a great example. You know his most deadly thing is he's gonna shoot the three. So just run him out the 3-point line. He doesn't really have other options. He's kind of like two-dimensional, where he's got that 3-point shot and he's got the drive, and and the drive usually sucks. But with DeRozan, like he's actually added so many things to his game now where you're not exactly sure where he's going. So you're always on edge. And I think that the pump fake, I mean, eventually they'll get scattered out. I think in the playoffs, like defenders you've seen in the last 2 years, basically Paul Pierce and Otto Porter Jr. and Joe Johnson a little bit, they've just learned, like, don't just let DeRozan shoot the mid-range shot.
That's my fear, man. It's that all this is good stuff, but it gets tested in the postseason. I'm just waiting for that to form a final opinion on this, but because that's the ultimate test. But to the comment you made about like this is a DeRozan that you'd feel comfortable giving the max to. Like, I don't know what that means anymore, to be honest with you. I mean, before it used to be a max player is your best player, and only like a handful of players in the league get the max. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. So the word max has this connotation attached to it, which is not true of what it was like 10 years ago. So I'm almost like, I don't even pay attention to salary cap anymore, because I'm just assuming that the GM is going to sign contracts which will not handcuff you from a salary point of view, from a trades point of view. And if that doesn't, if giving DeRozan a max doesn't handcuff us, then fine, give him the max. I don't care. But I think the larger fear here is that, fans have been through the Chris Bosh era, where everybody kind of knew deep down that Chris Bosh is a second or third tier NBA player who will never be the centerpiece for an organization. He's not good enough to be that. And yet we tried to build around him and we failed, obviously. And I'm not saying DeRozan is Chris Bosh. What I'm saying is that fans tend to look at DeRozan with that same lens, with that same fear that, are we just repeating what we did with Chris Bosh and surrounding and building a team around a player who's second rate? That may sound harsh, but that's the subconscious fear that a lot of Raptor fans have.
I think that kind of team building strategy has been a little bit more augmented of late. It seems like now, as long as if you have like a second tier star, that's okay. You keep building around that star, but you maintain flexibility, and you hope to be promising enough that you can attract a top tier star, or you can collect enough second tier stars that you can create something like what the Hawks do, right? So as long as the Raptors can maintain flexibility, and the Raptors are in a good spot because they do have that second star. Like the second star is Lowry. It's just, if you're going to build around Lowry and DeRozan, for the long term, I guess, I mean, this is going to be a much larger topic, but if you're going to build around Lowry and DeRozan for the long term, you need to do exactly what makes them great, which is basically you have everyone else on the floor to maximize their abilities, just like you would with any other star team or a team around with the stars. All the role players try to help complement the stars. Mm-hmm. And then if you make that the case, basically it's been proven for like 3 straight years now that the Raptors play their best when everyone else is a floor spacer around them, and that they can defend a little bit and try to use their mobility to defend. And that way you can create more driving lanes for DeRozan and Lowry, and then you have other defenders to make up for them so that they don't have as much energy because they spend it on the offensive end. You have better defenders to make up for them. But if you look at it through that lens, then like, is Valanciunas, does that even make sense?
I don't know. You kind of lost me at augmented.
Okay, well, basically, like, look, everyone else on the floor has to be service the abilities of DeRozan and Lowry if you're going to build around DeRozan and Lowry, like, for real. And Valanciunas doesn't really necessarily do that. Valanciunas is his own entity, you know what I mean? Like, the Raptors run those loop plays at the top, whatever, and it's like, oh my God, why don't they get the ball to Jonas? It's because a lot of what Jonas does is like separate from what they do, right? So like if they give him to him in the post, like the rest of the offense grinds to a halt. Those are long-term questions, so.
Yeah, that's something I'm not going to tackle here. But by the way, James Johnson didn't play a minute in this game against the Bulls, despite the Raptors not having an answer for Jimmy Butler. I remember on social media, on Twitter, I actually posted a video of in that game where he played 5 minutes and had zeros across the board. The 5 trillion he had. I actually posted a video of him like cutting to the rim without the ball, and it resulting in a shot for Corey Joseph, which he made. And I think my tweet was something like, move without the ball, kids. It's good for you. And James Johnson actually liked that tweet, so he's been like searching his own name and and liking things that paint him in a positive light. Poor guy. He appears to be very sad, and I can't blame him.
He's out of the rotation. Like, and when the Raptors are fully healthy, he's not part of the rotation, which it kind of sucks. I don't know. Like, the Raptors could have used him a little bit today, but at the same time, like, Terrence Ross has been so hot with the jumper. It's hard to not play him.
Let's talk about Ross. Let's talk about Ross. Enough James Johnson.
Okay, yeah.
Let's talk about Ross for a second. The way I look at it, man, yeah, you've had a good 3 weeks. Great. Now do it for the rest of the season. Until then, I'm holding off on any accolades or any large praises or justifications for his contract or anything like that, because we've seen good stretches from players time and time again. It's about, can you do it consistently? So for me, this is a step in the right direction. It doesn't mean, you guys make fun of him with TJ and all that stuff, but this is a small step in a long road. And I'm glad it's been positive for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, or whatever it's been. But, talk to me in March and see how we're doing.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with Ross, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's two ways to approach Ross. There's like one group that like I think I'm definitely part of this group, where it's just like we praise Ross for just doing what he's supposed to do, right? Like if he just hits 3 and plays some decent defense against some smaller guards, we're like, holy crap, here's Terrence Ross, let's praise him. Or here's TJ Ross. And then there's the other group where it's just like, like obviously they expect Ross to do more than what he's actually done. Like there's no rewards given out to most other players for just doing what you're supposed to do. You get rewarded or you get praised when you sort of go above and beyond that, right? Like you have a great game. And so for that group, like Ross almost never gets praise from, and it's just mostly disappointment for most of it. So, having been on both sides of this, it's just, I find as a Raptors fan, just to deal with Ross, it's just like, there's nothing we can do. Ross is on this team. He's got the extension. It's just, you're already pot committed with Ross. So, not pot committed, but he's a sunk cost at this point, right? And you just hope that he does something good.
He essentially is in the same boat, obviously at a higher number salary-wise than, previous Brian Colangelo signings like, Linus Kleza or Jason Capono or even Landry Fields, where you expect this like basic level of competence from the person, and if they're able to do that, you're satisfied, and if they go beyond that, you're overwhelmed with joy. And right now we're kind of seeing satisfaction from the fans because he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and the most frustrating thing with Ross is just like there's no baseline at all to his performance. Like if he's bad, he's just like he could be one of the worst players in the league, the bad level, right? Like even if Lowry has a bad game, all right, there's a certain floor to his game, whereas he's still able to contribute with defense. He's still driving productively. Maybe his jumper's off, but he's able to do other things, right? Whereas with Ross, if he's just not engaged, well, and there's obviously lots of games where Ross is not engaged. When he's just not engaged, he's horrible at everything, and that throws your whole team in the whack because it's almost like, oh my God, randomly our dude got injured.
He's either flatlining or peaking. There's no in between.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. It just, look, the Raptors have kind of hitched their wagon to him. So as a fan base, like there's almost nothing to do. It's either feel frustrated, admittedly frustrated because he honestly is so frustrating as a player, or just take the more calmer worldview and just pretend like he's a sunk cost and be like, yeah, you did anything.
Like he's like when you buy a expensive Blu-ray player whose receipt you lost and you can't return, and you use it like once in a while. That's the level of satisfaction you get from Terrence Ross.
Yeah, someone like gives you a gift
Yeah.
of a Blu-ray and they're like, check out Prometheus. Bam, you finally can use it for once. Yeah, that's Terrence Ross.
Yep.
Not very useful. I mean, that's not true. He is very useful. His three-point shooting is, I mean, it's going to become increasingly more and more useful in the modern game. So it's almost like no matter what Terrence Ross does, his skill set is just like, because of forces not attributable to him, makes him more valuable.
Yeah, it's like he was born at the right time.
He's perfect. Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Like if Tony Kukoc played in today's NBA, he'd be a $20 million a year player.
A monster.
Yeah.
A monster, man.
Unfortunately, he was born with Michael Jordan around. Well, not unfortunately, he won 3 titles and all that. But
yeah, of course. Yeah, like if Antoine Walker was in this era.
No, he would still suck though, man. He hit like threes at like 30%.
Yeah, he'd be.
It doesn't matter when he was born.
All right, fair enough.
He could have been born in the roaring 20s and it wouldn't matter. All right, hey, we should take a break. And come back after these messages from our sponsor.
When I started practicing law years ago, I noticed very quickly that the cards were stacked against innocent accident victims. That's not right. That's why my law firm is dedicated to working exclusively on behalf of those who need it the most. I'm Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. When you're in an accident, we can help you get the compensation you deserve. Visit goldfingerlaw.com and get us working for you.
Will, I know your first bookmark is raptorsrepublic.com, but what's your second one?
Goldfinger, baby.
Goldfingerlaw.com. That's what mine is.
Exactly.
Because you never know when you might need a personal injury lawyer.
I like to stack the cards in my own favor.
Yeah.
But when they are not stacked in my favor, I call for help.
Yeah, I know Blake should call him because if Blake runs into DeMar DeRozan at the next practice, he might need one.
Woof.
Woo.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Can you tell the listener what happened there? I know Blake said, like, let's not... just tell the listener what happened.
I know Blake said let's not talk about it, but let's just tell the listener.
Anyways. Yeah.
All right, look. There's no harm, no foul here, basically. Blake is in terms of his tastes in rap music, sometimes very eccentric. So one of his favorites is this random dude named Froggy Fresh, who, as far as I know, is just like a YouTube sensation kind of guy, like that kind of level of rapper. And he's a Chicago Bulls fan. And for last year's playoffs, he made a song, which actually is quite catchy, just called Jimmy Butler is Your Father, and it's about LeBron James. And it's mostly just like a fun little thing. It's got like 1 million views. Half of it's from Blake. So Blake loves that song. And so Blake was previewing the Raptors game. And the Raptors this is for the Monday game against the Bulls, where the Raptors also lost. Blake was talking about how hot DeRozan's been, and it's gonna be a really nice matchup to go against Butler, who's historically defended him really well. And the way he chose to express that thought of Butler has defended him really well is making a reference to Jimmy Butler as his father. And then somehow that tweet got linked to DeMar DeRozan himself, and DeRozan responded saying, "My father's name ain't Jimmy," or something like that. And then Blake had to walk that back. I mean, it was just a joke.
Yeah,
it was just a joke.
I only got one father, and it ain't him. Referring to Jimmy Butler.
That's it.
Unrelated note. DeMar DeRozan today, 24 points. Jimmy Butler today, 42 points. Completely unrelated, but just want to say that.
Yeah. Jimmy Butler was everybody's father today. Yeah. All right.
Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the other games that happened during the week. The Raptors did beat the Washington Wizards again. And they beat their boogie team, the shorthanded Charlotte Hornets at home. Game tied at 94. Kyle Lowry hits a big three, and then Kyle Lowry comes up with a big steal. And essentially, Kyle Lowry wins us the game down the stretch. It wasn't all him. There was a big part played by DeMar DeRozan in the first half. So it wasn't just about Kyle Lowry, but good to see the Charlotte Hornets go down. Will?
Oh, of course, man. I hate the Hornets. I hate the Hornets. It's just like there's nothing really necessarily hate about them. It's just the Raptors have had so many either needlessly tough or just like needlessly painful games against the Hornets. I was in the arena last year when Kemba Walker hit that step back to win it at the buzzer. So Yeah, it's always good to beat the Hornets, and obviously, like, they played really well despite being shorthanded again. And my thought throughout the game was, look, the Raptors are going to win this, but that guy Nick Batum on the other team, he looks great, and I would not mind if Nick Batum somehow found his way to the Raptors, because Nick Batum is a very, very talented player, and I'm just honestly even thinking about Batum along with Carroll and sort of a 3-4 small ball lineup. Oh man, the Raptors, go get Nick Batum. And Nick Batum apparently reportedly would like to come to Toronto too. I mean, it seems like most of the international players do. Toronto is a worldly city. It's a beautiful city. Come to Toronto, Nick Batum. We can have a team that challenges LeBron James for the Eastern Conference supremacy.
I'm sure Masai Ujiri will actually go for him. I think he'll try to take a run at him. I think that much I'm pretty confident he will. But did you see in this game? This game would have been over earlier if it weren't for Marvin Williams hitting like 2 massive threes out of nowhere to tie the game when the Raptors had edged forward. But then the Hornets kind of ran out of gas. But entertaining part from this game was Tyler Hansbrough going against Bismack Biyombo. A lot of bad blood there for some reason. The former Raptor, former Hornet going at it. A couple of possessions where they really were, in each other's face, and Tyler Hansbrough at the end kind of backed away.
Yeah, I really liked that battle. That subtle sort of, they never had the ball, but like they would fight each other in the post nonstop for the second half. And it was really nice because like Tyler Hansbrough tried to punk him a couple times, as Tyler Hansbrough does. Dropped the elbow on the back of Biyombo's head on a rebound once, even though Hansbrough had already got the rebound. And Biyombo, like to his credit, he didn't retaliate, and it's very easy to retaliate, and it's just like, it was nice because Biyombo's playing the role that Tyler Hansbrough did last year, but Biyombo's playing it so much better than Hansbrough did, and it's nice to see that it's been an upgrade, and I'm sure it's for him. It's emotional. Like he talked about after the game, like he really wanted to beat the Hornets, and he was robbed of that chance when the Raptors lost to Jeremy Lin and the Hornets in overtime, which is such a strange sentence to say. And now he finally got his revenge, and I don't know, man. Biyombo's great. I really, really like Biyombo and his addition to this team, and it's nice to have him sort of defeat the guy he came to replace. It's like when your new girlfriend meets your ex, and I don't know.
Your ex has had 3 kids and 2 abortions and is on meth. That's what Tyler Hansbrough looks like.
Wow, Jesus. I mean, I guess that's true. I guess.
And Bismack Biyombo, by comparison, is one chill dude. He's into Zen. He does yoga like all the time. Like he goes home and does yoga. And there was a couple of quotes where he said that he tried to introduce like meditation and yoga into Charlotte last year, and like nobody would have it. They were like, "Yeah, you're kind of weird, man." But here, I think with James Johnson and stuff around, I think then they're more into that stuff. So
Al Jefferson, the pothead, was just not into it.
Imagine like Al Jefferson trying to do yoga. Like what is his number one question? When do
He's not a flexible man, no.
When do we get high? Right now or later? After this pose or no? All right. So good on you, Bismack Biyombo. He had 18 rebounds in that first encounter with the Hornets, and the second time around he did beat him, and he had a pretty big game. He had 11 rebounds and 8 points. So
4 blocks, I think.
4 blocks, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was one of the game, and then there was a Washington game. Washington again, very shorthanded. No Nene, no Bradley Beal, no Allen Anderson, no Gary Neal. So essentially like 2 starters missing and a couple of role players. And the Raptors, easy game for them. This one, Will. It ended 94-91, but that scoreline is really not telling you how the game went.
Yeah, there were like 2 late threes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was great because to see that game, it was Kyle Lowry had been outplayed by John Wall severely in that game. John Wall had a really great game, and it was just nice to see John Wall frustrated and try his hardest and for his team to lose. It's not even I dislike John Wall at all. It's just obviously from the pain of last year's playoffs. It's nice. It was a schadenfreude moment to have John Wall try his hardest. And honestly, John Wall, I mean, if it wasn't for him, the Wizards would have lost by like 35 in that game. Yeah, man, it's nice. It's always good to beat the Wizards. I like that the Raptors now have opponents where they can actually genuinely dislike and get up for these games. And it feels like they really did get up for the Wizards game.
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan was actually asked if he considers the Wizards or the Hornets rivals, and the Wizards. Sorry, are they the rivals? And he said no, they're not. And I consider the Wizards a rival. and I also consider the Nets a rival for some reason, and also the Celtics. Those are my top 3 rival teams in the East. In the West, I don't think we have any rivals, but those 3 in the East are really my top 3.
Well, I mean, the Golden State Warriors are our rivals. We did only lose to them in 2 games by a combined 8 points.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
We're about equal, us and the Warriors.
It's not like I actually circle any Celtic, Nets, and Wizards games.
Yeah, for sure. I would kind of add the Hornets to that one, but it's like a very one-way rivalry. Like the Hornets are probably like, "Why do you hate us?" And we're just like, "Why do you always beat us with these worst teams?" I would say out of all of them, actually, I would really like for the Raptors to build a rivalry with the Celtics because they're up and coming as well, and just all those memories. I mean, do you remember in I think 2009 when it was like the Big 3 era in Boston? Paul Pierce drove down the lane. Chris Bosh was covering for probably Jamario Moon or some other crappy wing that blew the defensive rotation and allowed Paul Pierce to drive to the basket. And then Pierce, like on his way at the basket, kneed Chris Bosh right in the groin. Mm-hmm. Yep. And Chris Bosh afterwards he dunked on him, like cowered over, like Pierce, like taunted Bosh as Bosh was sort of writhing on the ground. Yep. And then no one came to Bosh's defense. No one. And I think that's the moment when Chris Bosh decided, I'm going to Miami. I'm not staying with these horrible teammates that I've got.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, F the Celtics, man. F the Celtics.
Yeah, that was a sad era for the Raptors. But the only interesting thing about the Wizards this year is me is Kris Humphries shooting threes. He's shooting 2.5 threes per game this year. And in his previous, 12-plus seasons in the league, he has shot – the max he shot is 0.13 per game. He's basically becoming a three-point shooter. And even he's hitting at 35%, which is higher than DeMar DeRozan. So, DeMar, if Kris Humphries can do it, I know you can, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kris Humphries gets, wider, cleaner looks than DeRozan, but yeah.
No, I think DeRozan gets pretty wider, cleaner looks too. He just doesn't make them. The defense dares DeMar DeRozan to shoot the ball, man.
And they should. Should.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if Kris Humphries can do it, I'm sure DeMar DeRozan can. And he is shooting 36% for December from 3, by the way, so that's one competitive.
Hey, and that can only be bumped up by the performance against the Bulls, where I think he hit 3 threes. So, yeah, man, I also didn't realize that Kris Humphries is in his 12th season in the NBA. He's never had more than 7 attempts in a year, and now he's at 65 this year.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he realized what he needs to do to stay in the league for the next 3 years, and he wants to collect another paycheck. That's all. Can't blame him for that.
That's honestly what Tyler Hansbrough should be doing too.
I don't want to talk about the first Bulls game. We lost it. That's all you need to know about that.
It's ugly. Second half was super ugly.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. First half was competitive. I think the Raps were up 2 or down 2 or something.
Yeah, the offense was flowing really nicely in that game. JV had come back immediately, was impactful. I think he was 5 of 6 from the floor in the first half, and then Gasol shut him down. Yeah. They shut everyone down. It was a very awkward second half, and Aaron Brooks kept scoring on Corey Joseph. That was weird.
Yeah, that was that second quarter and fourth quarter. That was the game where Dwayne Casey trotted out a bench lineup to start the second and the fourth quarter. And the second quarter was all bench, and the fourth quarter he had DeMar DeRozan out there with him, or Kyle Lowry. I can't remember right now, but it performed really poorly. And I'm surprised he even tried it in the fourth quarter after it had failed so miserably in the second. And that was the key moment of that game. Dwayne Casey's tendency to go with the hockey lineup changes.
Yeah, he does a lot. Bobby Portis, by the way, in that game, really impressed by Bobby Portis.
Yeah,
he's had a couple of really good games, and there's no point in overreacting and saying, "Oh, the Raptors screwed up." They should have taken Bobby Portis, but at the same time, he would have fit a lot of the Raptors' needs, especially since Patrick Patterson has played rather poorly.
Bobby Portis, and I give you DeLon Wright 33 points in the D League against Sioux Falls something.
Now, what's the conversion rate there? A point in the D League is
That's a good question.
It's probably 4-1 D League to NBA.
4-1, yeah, I'd say so.
So you had a 8-point game.
Well, he also had 5 assists, which are and the conversion rate there is even harsher.
Actually, no. Assists, I feel like it's more difficult because in the D League, you're always changing different players. Yeah, I mean, you need players to hit shots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So road trip coming up. Starts January 4th, the Monday. It's a 5-game road trip: Cleveland, Brooklyn, Washington, Philly, and Orlando. Obviously, LeBron James is on Monday night in Cleveland this time. We beat them on Drake night last time around. What has changed for the Cavaliers since, Will?
Well, they got Kyrie Irving back, so that's not great.
By the way, did you notice his tweet when he came back? He had the "I'm back" tweet, like "I'm back." I don't like that. That's like reserved for like top level players, like the "I'm back" quote. Like Jordan did that when he came back from retirement. "I'm back" makes sense there. When Kyrie Irving's out for a couple of months and comes back with an "I'm back," it doesn't do it for me.
I mean, what else do you think? That's probably the most efficient way for him to say it. Like the phrasing, like it's perfect phrasing. Actually, no, I was just gonna say I'm back moniker. Like just that alone, like always reminds me of that TTC ad. You know the one I'm talking about?
Nah, tell me.
It's like an erection. It's like an erectile dysfunction ad. It's just like a man who's like running free in a field, and it's like a big caption that says "I'm back," and then there's like a some treatment for ED. So
yeah, I prefer the one with they just show like a couch and like popcorn not being eaten.
Yeah, actually, the ones where they ask about Cialis, it's very awkward because like I'll watch it with my little brother who's 13, and last time we watched the Raptors game together, that ad came on, and he was like, "What was that commercial about?" And I like didn't want to explain it to him.
They should have like a Raptor themed ED ad. Like show the Raptors bench and like Dwayne Casey's seat is empty, and then the brand comes up. Oh, yes, we were talking about Cleveland and LeBron James.
Yeah. So Kyrie Irving's back. The Raptors are traveling on the second half of back-to-back. Yeah, this is going to be a hard one.
Scheduled loss. Is that what Blake calls it? Scheduled loss.
It kind of is a scheduled loss, but at the same time, the Raptors have played the Cavaliers pretty competitively over the last couple of years. Man, DeMarre Carroll, like the guy we just talked about,
he's injured. He better not play.
He better not. He's going to be so. He's going to be so injured after LeBron drops 30 points or something. I don't know. We'll need DeMarre Carroll a lot. He played a really big role in the other game, and in the other game, that was one of Kyle Lowry's best performances I've ever seen in a Raptors uniform. And in order to beat the Cavaliers, he's going to need to replicate that, and DeRozan's going to have to bring it. Basically, everyone has to bring it. It's the Cavaliers, man. They're the best team in the East. Yeah, I don't know. It'll probably be a loss. What do you think?
I don't know.
Schedule loss?
Probably a loss. I mean, back to back. DeMarre Carroll's injured. James Johnson's not getting any minutes. But the Raptor team has surprised you sometimes. I mean, they beat OKC, way back when. Seems like forever ago. But they beat Miami, in Miami once. So stranger things have happened, I guess. Kinda, not really. But this is, if I had to put money on it, it's definitely a loss. If nothing, because a game like tonight takes so much out of you mentally. Then you got to hop back on a plane and go to Cleveland and face LeBron James, and you're already kind of hobbled. And I don't know, it seems too big of an ask. But after that, things get a little lighter. Brooklyn, who beat the Celtics tonight, surprisingly, in Boston, I think that game was. And it's in Brooklyn. It's at the haunted house that is what's the arena called again?
The Barclays Center.
Barclays Center, yeah. It's essentially. They could have like two events there at the same time. They could have like a basketball game going on and a circus at the same time because there's enough like seating area for both of them.
Yeah, Nets games, man, that's so depressing. And they lost Jarrett Jack, who was their only viable point guard.
And
now they're starting
about it. They're upset about losing Jarrett Jack. They're like, our season's over. Jarrett Jack's gone.
This is straight up the first time anybody's been upset about losing Jarrett Jack, but they should be upset about losing Jarrett Jack because, first of all, they have no incentive to lose because the Celtics have the right to swap picks with them. So there's that. They need to win every game. And second, their backup point guard is Shane Larkin, who, look, there's just not a good history of. There's basically Isaiah Thomas, and that's it for point guards who are effective, who are under like 5'10". And Shane Larkin's not great. And man, I don't know. The rest of that team is just so sad. Like, they have no backup point guard behind that. Andre Bargnani is like a real piece for them. Oh man.
Yeah.
So that's a win. That's a win.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and do a podcast and say, a loss against the Brooklyn Nets. Come on. That would be the.
They're actually surprisingly decent at home, but like, come on, you have to destroy them.
Yeah, you can't have that. They did beat Boston, as I said, 197, and they have won 2 of their last 3. They also beat Miami in Miami, so that kind of reduces the meaning of the Raptors win there. And Miami actually crushed, I should know this, listener, hang on, Washington, yeah. And after that, we got Washington again for the 3rd time this season.
So it's just expect another ugly game.
Ugly games.
I would think.
I don't think Washington has any players back from the last time we played them. So it
I
should
think
be more the same.
Beal might be back before then. Because he's close. Like, you're seeing reports now where he's like a little bit questionable for the game instead of just being firmly out. So he's probably close. He was only supposed to miss like 2-3 weeks anyway. Obviously if Beal comes back, that's a huge difference maker for them. But yeah, it's probably just gonna be one of those super. I mean, the last 2 Raptors games against the Wizards, it's just been very hard to come by offense, and it's kind of whoever hits their shots wins.
Yeah,
kind
but
of
then
scenario.
again, this is a game in Washington, and we've always had entertaining games there, so keep your eye out on this one. I'll pick the Raptors again for this one. They beat the Wizards once. There's no reason why they can't do it again. It's not a back-to-back for the Raptors, which is good. So I got to pick the Wiz, man. Sorry, I picked the Raps here.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think the Raptors really have it out for the Wizards, and they should. If they have any pride at all, they should, because they're basically the same 2 teams as last year. And I think actually the one breakthrough I've seen from the 2 Raptors games against the Wizards this year is just like Marcin Gortat used to just destroy the team because he's so good at defending the post against JV, and immobility-wise, because John Wall's such a good facilitator, JV has a really hard time covering the pick and roll. But Biyombo really did a number against Gortat, and it's just like the type of players Gortat struggles with is those who are more athletic than him. And Gortat and Biyombo definitely is, and he did a really great job crashing the boards in the last game against Washington. So I think Biyombo's going to play a big role in that one. Weird, random observation.
Yeah, Gortat's whole thing is that he's got that little jump hook, but if you shove him like a little past his comfort zone, he's reluctant to take it, or he hesitates and he wastes clock. And that's what Biyombo did last time with him, and it helped. And the other thing is he has that drop step, which he executes pretty well on the right block. And JV's done actually fairly okay with it, but Biyombo actually loses his footing on the drop step, but manages to recover for the block or the contest, which is really odd. By actually playing not good positional defense, he actually still manages to play overall good defense by contesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, Biyombo's defense is by far better in terms of help scenarios than, like, man-to-man in the post scenarios. So it's almost like he's creating a help scenario for himself by getting out of position and then recovering.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on JV overall since he came back?
He looks slower than before, which is a problem. But I think that's just game speed. Like, I think eventually he will get back to speed. My thoughts on JV is mostly just, like, he's a platoon player. And you have to really make sure the scenario is the opportunity is right to play JV. It's you can't just throw them out there for everything at this point, which is honestly the same story. It's been the same story with JV for most of his career. But I don't know, man. It's nice. It's nice having this sort of yin and yang duo with JV and Biyombo, because Biyombo brings so much hustle and energy, and he brings a negative effect to the offense, just quite frankly, because his man's always been sitting in the basket, whereas JV's obviously a much better offensive player, and it's an actual option where you can throw the ball to JV instead of, I don't know, with Biyombo, what can you do with him? Not too much, but yeah, I don't know. JV, he's fine. He'll come around. I don't know. JV doesn't excite me as much as a prospect as he once did. I think it's just you reach a logical conclusion of like, what can JV do and when can he play, and it's just the answer is he can't always play.
Him and Biyombo should go for an ice fishing trip up north in the cold, and then do some yoga there, like bond and like become one. Because we have JV. If JV had Bismack's strengths, he'd be a great player, and if Bismack had JV's strengths, he'd be a pretty good player. So I think if you send them up north to, like, I don't know, ice fishing and something, and they just kind of bond together there, you know.
As long as they go with a driver up north, I'm fine. All right, no more JV goes to Tim Hortons in driving a car or some shit. Like, stop that.
Yeah. That would never happen to Biyombo.
No.
Final game of the week is Philadelphia 76ers, who are undefeated against the Pacific Division. They've beaten Sacramento, Phoenix, and the Lakers all this season. But they lost to the Clippers. And so that ended. But they were undefeated against the Pacific Division at one point, having won all 3 games against them. But other than that, they're 3-33. And a story I read from earlier, from in 2015, was that a lot of Sixers fans had actually, put some money together and actually sent gifts to the head coach because they felt so sorry for Brett Brown. Yeah, they sent him a fruit basket. Yeah. So that was nice of them. What should we send him? I don't know. Another loss?
They want losses, man.
Yeah, they want them, man.
You know what? That's funny because Jerry Colangelo, who's sort of unofficially taken over sort of the front office responsibilities. Sam Hinkie's still there, but clearly they're changing their plan a little bit from tanking absolutely to building a little bit for the future. And, Jerry Colangelo gave, Brett Brown a gift basket of his own in Ish Smith, who's actually been kind of decent for them. A point guard who can actually do things. Obviously, Ish Smith is nothing to write home about, but I think if you're playing fantasy sports, here's a tidbit for your daily fantasy gamblers out there. Pick up Ish Smith, man. He's going to be good for like 8 or 9 assists a game because the Sixers still play at a really high pace, and now the team actually has a point guard to actually start their offense, which is slightly annoying because I like the Sixers better when they would straight up just roll over.
Yeah. Another Sixers story this week was that Okafor's dad was like 2 rows behind their bench in a road game, and he was basically yelling at Brett Brown the entire time. I don't know about what. I don't know what Brett Brown can do to make the Sixers better, given the situation. But he was just abusing him. And finally, like in the third quarter, Okafor went over and goes like, "Just shut up, dude. Like you're embarrassing yourself."
Yeah, I mean, what Jahlil Okafor needs right now is more bad press. So thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Thanks to Daddy Okafor there. Yeah. Whose name is Chuck Okafor. That's a good name.
That sounds made up.
Do you know Joey Crawford? So referee Joey Crawford's retiring after 39 years. At the end of this season, his dad's name was Shag. Shag Crawford. Yeah.
That's fake too. It's got to be an actual.
Yeah. Like Shag was a nickname, but that was the name he went with. Like he was an MLB umpire for a long time, and it was just Shag Crawford.
That'd be an awesome name in the 70s when you're hitting the bar scene. Shag.
Oh, for sure.
Nice.
It's got a mustache for sure.
All right,
Shag.
I think we got to leave it at that, Will.
Yeah, it's a win against the Sixers, right?
Oh, yeah.
No, of course.
Kidding.
Goes without saying, we're not in the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, if you can't get enough of Will, he is available for your pleasure, for your listening pleasure, on Friday mornings with Blake as they do the Raptors Weekly Extra podcast, where they take the longer, more intelligent view, I'm told.
Yeah, that was what we were supposed to do, but that was so pedantic. Yeah, no, we just mostly talk about the Raptors. We just don't cover it as specifically game to game on this granular level. But I don't know. Hey, check us out, man. It's a great pod. Blake does a great job, as do you, Zarar. And yeah, I'm just happy to be on both pods, guys. I'm happy to be the DeMarre Carroll to fit your Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. Centerpieces. Yeah, I'm a role player now.
Okay, all right.
Step back.
So that's that. We'll see you next week. Happy New Year to the listener. And somebody told me that even though we have a good listenership for this podcast, we don't have enough iTunes ratings. So if you're on iTunes or Android or whatever mobile device you listen to this podcast on, do go into whatever app you go on and rate us and tell us what you think of the podcast. Obviously, a higher rating is better. So I don't know how to do it, but go rate us and tell us and I don't know, do some rating is what people tell me.
Go to the App Store, man. Write us a review. You can write reviews on the App Store.
Damn.
Say nice things about us. Say that Zarar pronounces Bebe's name funny. Stuff like that.
Yeah, do it, man. Just rate us, because that's what I got a few emails this week saying that we don't have enough ratings on the iTunes store or whatever. So just go take care of that, guys. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next week. Until then, bye-bye.